This is the Almost Timely newsletter for the week of March 3rd, 2023. Content authenticity statement. 95% of this week's newsletter is generated by me, the human. You will see some outputs from Gemini, Google's Gemini, in the opening section, in the demo section especially. There's a link at the top of the newsletter to learn why this kind of disclosure is important and why it's actually legally required in certain parts of the world. All right. What's on my mind this week? Recipes versus principles. Last week, we talked about principles-based prompt engineering, and you were not impressed. Yeah. In fact, last week's newsletter scored as one of the lowest issues in recent times because each issue has a one-click survey below the main article, and a whole bunch of you said last week's episode was not super helpful. And I have a hypothesis as to why. One, I filmed it in a really unpleasant environment, which made it not as fun to listen to. And two, there's a big difference between recipe and concept, between principles-based prompt engineering and, hey, here's a template, copy and paste and use this, right? To build long-term success, you absolutely need to understand concepts and apply them. You start with the basics, you learn variations of those basics, and then you transcend the basics. This is a concept from the Japanese martial arts known as shuhari. Learn the basics, vary the basics, transcend the basics, and leave them behind. It's a process as old as professions and arts themselves, but that's for the long term. When you are trying to master a discipline over a period of years, maybe even decades. When I go to the dojo on Saturday mornings, it's an expression of this principle in action. I've been there for 31 years now. The reality is, this is not most people's intent when it comes to generative AI, to have it be a discipline that you master over years. Why? Well, based on the conversations I've heard in analytics for marketers and other forums, you're overwhelmed. Right? You're overwhelmed by generative AI, but just overwhelmed and overworked in general. You're running without a full team. Your company's got a hiring freeze, maybe even got a skeleton crew. Either way, it's not great, right? Your brain is so fried just in survival mode that you're not receptive to investing a lot of time in the way that you might study an art form or a science, right? And there's nothing wrong with that. That's the reality. But it means that focusing solely on the principles may not be what you want, right? The analogy that I often use from cooking, huge surprise, is the difference between learning the principles of cooking versus following a recipe. For example, a cooking principle is to always salt your tomatoes, regardless of application. Tomatoes contain glutamic acid, which, when combined with salt, forms a natural kind of MSG. It makes them taste much better. That's the principle. It's a scientific principle. Contrast that with a recipe which simply tells you to put salt on the tomatoes before serving it and say, a caprese salad. You don't know why you're doing it, but you do it if you're following the recipe, and the outcome is good, right? So you succeed, you make the salad, everybody's happy. The difference between principle and recipe is that the outcome for the specific recipe is the same, whether you know the principle or not. But if you made another dish with tomatoes that had a different recipe and you didn't understand this principle that salt plus glutamic acid makes natural MSG, then if you had a recipe where they didn't put salt on the tomatoes, it might not turn out as well, and you wouldn't know why, right? Because you don't have that principle in mind. I've been thinking a lot about this in the context of generative AI lately, posting on LinkedIn and stuff. And, there is no shortage of people hawking top 50 power awesome ChatGPT prompts on LinkedIn and, other places. And I've dug into some of those. They're essentially cookbooks with recipes, and those recipes are generally okay, right? I haven't run into any that I was blown away by, and I have not run into any that I was horrified by, but they're all okay. They're the most okayest. And yet people love these sorts of recipe collections. They want these recipe collections. Why? Because as much as principles matter, sometimes you just need to get dinner on the table in 30 minutes or less. You don't care about the principle. You care about getting dinner on the table, right? At the end of the day, you're tired. You don't want to think too hard. You just want some directions to follow on a card and boom, dinner. And that's sort of, the generative AI equivalent of a canned prompt, right? It's a prompt that you open up, you copy, tweak a few things with your specifics, and then paste. You follow the instructions as surely as you do on a box of pre-made cake mix, and you end up with a satisfactory result. Is it going to be the best result possible? No, Probably not. Is it going to be good enough? Yeah, probably. But do we want eh, good enough? Do we want okay? Or do we want something better? Where you really run into challenges though is when you have something that does not fit an existing recipe. This is when the principles come in handy. This is when you need to know the principles so that you can generate your own recipes when there's a situation where there isn't a recipe. Um, my friend Ashley Foss over on LinkedIn suggested this thing that she's been working on, noodling on. And I think it'd be a fun exercise to go through it and see what does this look like to build a recipe, to build your own recipe so that you've got you've got what you need, right? So that you're no longer just following someone else's recipe, but you know what went into it. So Ashley says, we have tiers for our product launches, ranging from a tier one launch with all the activities, press, keynote mention, blog post, demo series, announcement, email, product tour update, etc., to tier four, which is like basically a notification email. It seems like there should be a combination of AI and automation that could help a marketer generate a launch plan and all the associated tickets and or pages required. But would the prompt be, I'm doing a tier one launch about product name, generate the launch plan and associated tickets for the creative team, blog team, web team? Or would the prompt be, I have a launch coming up that meets these criteria, customer impact, company impact, other criteria. Please choose the relevant launch tier and generate a launch plan. And then maybe a separate prompt to generate the tickets and pages. Like if we have a template for an announcement blog for a tier one launch, would it generate the page with the template or generate a draft of the launch blog itself? Or again, I think this is a mix of internal, external AI capabilities. Automation rules, human collab, but I don't know the mix. Okay, Ashley is correct. This is something that generative AI can handle at least partially, but I can guarantee as of right now, there is no recipe for this, right? There is no magic chat GPT prompt that is going to do this. The first principle we have to invoke, right? We're going to invoke principles. I know folks are not thrilled by this, but we're going to invoke principles is whether this task is a fit for generative AI or not. Right. So in this case, we're going to be doing, language models because this is clearly a language task. Is this a task? Building a launch plan. Is this a language problem? Yes. Right. It is building a language, building a launch plan. Is creating tickets something that generative AI can handle? Because Ashley works for the software company Atlassian, and their Jira ticketing system is really well known. Can generative AI talk to Jira? Probably not out of the box, although I'm sure there's plugins and APIs and all that stuff, but out of the box, probably not. But Jira can ingest spreadsheets like CSV files. Can generative AI make CSV files? Yes. Yes, it can. So there's our first set of principles. Can we even do this? And the answer is probably yes. What's the recipe? How do we build a recipe? Well, you see what we're doing here. We are starting the foundation to create that recipe. Something my partner and CEO Katie Robert talks about all the time is user stories, short, punchy descriptions of what you're trying to do that helps you build requirements for the project. In this case, Ashley's got a bunch of user stories all bundled up into her statement. She really did a good job of sort of condensing them into that big paragraph of text. So that is going to be our recipe for using it with generative AI. Once you know what it is you're trying to do and you figure out whether generative AI can do it or not, then it's time to build the recipe. And when you do that, when you build the recipe, you can follow it over and over again. You can tweak it, you can adjust it, you can give it to other people to execute on it. So how do we make this into a recipe? Well, I figured this week's video, let's actually build this together. I'm going to use Google Gemini. You can use ChatGPT. You can use the language model of your choice. I'm just using Gemini because I don't have any limits on how often I can use it, which to me is a pretty big deal. All right, so let's start off with a priming. So again, there's another principle of language models. They know stuff, right? They have a lot of information, all the information they've been trained on in their long-term memories. But in the short-term memory, which is here, this working session, there's nothing. I can't sensibly give it a prompt that says, that is just a launch plan. In fact, let's do this. I'm going to take Ashley's original prompt here, right? I'm going to about Atlassian Jira. So let's see, just based on this, with that very short prompt, what the result's going to be. It's not going to be great, right? So there's some objectives, some target audience, key messaging. This is not super helpful. Very generic. Okay. So there it is. That's okay. It's not great. Very generic. Probably does not map very well to the way Ashley does stuff. So let's start a new chat. Now, what I want to do is, instead of just telling it to do the thing, I want to know what's in the model's short-term memory, long-term memory, right? So I said, we're going to build a launch plan for Atlassian for their product launches. They typically have 4 tiers of launch plans based on the importance of the launch. Tier 1 launch, that's all the stuff right out of Ashley's original post on LinkedIn. So with the marketing launch plans explained above, can you summarize what you know about building a successful launch plan? Because I want to know about its knowledge first. I don't want to assume that it's good at this stuff. I want to read through this. So key components: target audience understanding, compelling value proposition, pre-launch marketing preparation, tiered launch approach, multi-channel promotion, Atlassian, tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, tier 4, additional considerations. So this is good, right? This is a good start. We now know generally what this model knows. I want more specifics. I want to know what kinds of marketing mechanisms they have. A company like Atlassian, so email announcement, YouTube video, press release, guest spot. Uh, please make a comprehensive tactical list. I want to know this. And now again, we're going back to its long-term memory and say, here is a comprehensive list: owned media, your website, your email, and all the different things, social media, webinars, in-app announcements, documentation, earned media, press releases, media and analyst relations, influencer marketing, customer advocacy, paid media, search engine marketing, social media advertising, display and banner ads, content syndication, native ads, industry events, community forums, partnerships, sales enablement. Right. So this is a very comprehensive list of everything that we have available to us. So now I don't I assume Ashley has her own definitions of what each tier is, but I'm going to have the model essentially reorganize this list into tiers. So we have, based on the importance of the announcement, and classify different activities based on their level of effort and cost. For example, a tier 1 launch is everything in the kitchen sink, no expense spared. A tier 4 launch is only things that can be done relatively quickly and at little to no cost. Please infer what tier 2 and tier 3 would be, and then sort our activities into tiers 1 through 4. List each tier as a bullet point, starting with tier 1. Now, here's where we're going to start doing some actual prompting. We see tier 1, maximum effort, maximum spend. These are all, everything's on the table. Tier 2, significant effort, moderate spend, press release, focused blog post, target campaigns. Tier 3, moderate effort, cost conscious, in-app announcements. Tier 4, minimal effort, low cost, no cost. I'm going to copy this. I'm going to put it in a text document here. So we're going to call this Atlassian product launch master prompt. And tiers of activations. I'm going to paste in, I'm going to trim off the fluffy stuff here at the beginning and the end. So now we have this prompt, and this prompt is the 4 tiers of Atlassian's launch system, right? This is part of the prompt. We're already well past the 1 sentence prompt. So those are our tiers. Let's now have it think about what Jira is, the ticketing system. What do you know about this thing? Going from long-term memory to short-term memory. Here's the Jira ticketing system overview. Key features, boards, required fields, optional fields, summary, issue type, commonly used fields, and so on and so forth. Let's say we know that we want to turn our task list into Jira tickets. So I'm going to say, let's say we're going to use this to manage the marketing operations at Atlassian. Based on your knowledge of the standard Jira ticket, what are the minimum fields needed from sending an email announcement? I probably need my name as the assignee, the task, when it's due, perhaps collaborators. So now we're going to say, help me write a format for a Jira ticket. So the minimum necessary standard Jira fields. All right. Adapting Jira for marketing. Key considerations. So I'm going to go ahead and copy this. And in this case, I'm just going to use the minimum, right? So let's see. We have tiers of activations, Jira ticket fields and data. I'm going to paste in the minimum necessary Jira fields. Okay, so this is part of our prompt now. We've defined what Jira essentially is going to be doing. Now we know from our prompt here what tier 3 is, right? Tier 3 is that moderate uh, sort of launch plan. So let's go ahead and say, I want to take this tier 3 plan and I want you to create a list of essentially minimum necessary the tasks, right? What goes into tier 3? So create in-app announcement, assignee, technical writer, content writer, social media marketing manager, content manager. So these are our tasks, right? Create those social posts. Um, this is good. This is nice, right? So we have proof that this data can be used to make the outputs actually wants, but I think we need some more detail, right? So let's see if we can get it to expand on the social media content. Okay, so here's some granular content for social media posts. So this is useful. Identify the feature, research relevant hashtags, and so on and so forth. You can see the assignations there. So we know that the tool can not only give us high level plans, but also drill down. The last thing we want to know is who is the ideal customer, right? So I'm going to say, based on your knowledge of Atlassian, who's their ideal customer profile? Who's the decision maker? Create a bullet point list of who this person is. Okay, we have Atlassian's ideal customer profile, company size. Uh, we have industry, company culture, typical decision makers, IT, business teams, decision maker pain points, what they care about, easy use, collaboration, culture, value. Okay, I'm going to copy this. Let's go back to my prompting structure here. And we're going to put in a field called ideal customer profile. And so let's trim off some of the fluff. Okay. So, what we have here is essentially a gigantic prompt with all the background information for this particular task. So, let's take this out of the way here. Let's now give it some instructions. So we're going to say we're going to build a tier 3 plan. Mm, actually no, let's do a tier 2 plan. Right. So, this is my instruction test. Here's the instructions. We're going to build a launch plan for Q3 using the tier 2 strategic promotion tier. Build a Jira table in Jira format using the necessary fields for each task. And here's the example, and so on and so forth. So this is straight out of what it just generated. So let's build that tier 2 launch plan and see what it looks like. Okay, main tasks. Good. Subtasks, social media subtasks, looking good. Okay, so we now have this general format for what we want to do. Now let's put it into the prompt. So we're going to call this instructions. And I'm going to take our tier 2 As a reminder, these are the tier 2 tasks. All right. Let's move this here. So what I've got here now is this prompt, right? It says your task is to build a table in Jira format using the necessary fields for each task, and so on and so forth. That's an example of a tier 3 list. So build a tier 2 launch plan. This is the bench test now. So this is the prompt. This is the prompt. We're going to take this, we're going to start a new chat, right? So all that history we used to build this recipe, we're going to put it in this massive, massive, huge prompt. This is the recipe. The ingredients are in there. The instructions and directions are in there. Let's see if all of this work to construct this highly customized prompt will pay off. Here's a tier 2 launch plan, press release. So it's having some formatting issues. Focused blog posts, targeted email campaign, segment the audience, social media campaign, draft social copy, and so on and so forth. Now this is formatted. It's in pipe delimited format, so you'll have to do a little massaging to fix the format. But this can go into Jira. Okay? This can go into your ticketing system. So if we think back to what Ashley was saying about, can we have this prompt generate a launch plan and the associated tickets? Yes. Yes, you can. The difference is it's not a short 1-paragraph prompt, right? Look at the size of this prompt. This is the master prompt. Here's your tiers of activations, and you can go and tune this up yourself, right? You don't have to just wait for what's in the model. Here's what is in the minimum fields required. Here's the ideal customer profile, who the buyer is. You might want to reference that, right? You'll be building a launch plan. Here are your instructions. Here's some examples. Following these examples, build the thing. That is the prompt. And so this is the recipe, right? And it's a big recipe. It's not, imagine the equivalent of a recipe being like, make some spaghetti and meatballs. No, you got to go through all the details like a real recipe. And we used a generative model to build this recipe. But now it's really thorough, right? You could hand this recipe to someone else on your team and say, modify these details and execute the recipe. So the recipe is cooked. The recipe is done. Recipes are a great idea, right? So we started talking about principles versus recipes. Recipes are a great idea, especially if you want to scale them, if you want to scale the use of generative AI. But the top 50 chat GPT prompts, that's a starting point. That is not the recipe for your company. Many of the recipes that you want don't exist, or they're woefully insufficient because they're a bad copy paste. You need to take the time to build your recipes so that they work really well for your company. And this is the secret sauce, right? This is the secret sauce. When you go through the process and build these long prompts, and you just saw me put a 5-page prompt into Gemini, and it did really nicely. That's your secret sauce. That's your programming code to make a marketing launch plan, or to make an ebook, or to write an email, whatever the thing is, whatever the task is. You've got to build the recipes. This is just like the culinary world. There's a lot of cooks, right? I'm a cook, you're a cook, right? If you cook food, you're a cook. Relatively few chefs who understand the principles and make the recipes. In generative AI, everyone's a cook, right? Everyone's pasting prompts in. Very few people are chefs of generative AI, making the really successful recipes for whatever task you need. Your mission is to find out who the chefs are in your organization, in your network, and whatever, as quickly as you can, so that you can start building your cookbook. You can start building your specific recipes, because those recipes are going to be your competitive advantage when you can provide it with your data, when you can tune it to your exact specifications, when you can build these enormous blueprints, these recipes, and your competitors out there saying, hey, ChatGPT, make me a launch plan, right? And you've got everything you need. You've got your ideal customer profile in there. You know who and what it belongs in this thing. That is going to be your secret sauce. And that is how you're going to make generative AI a competitive advantage for you. Someone has to know the principles to make the recipes, and then everybody in the company uses the recipes. And you keep adapting them, just like a real recipe. You keep changing it. You test it out, add new ingredients, and so on and so forth to make it the best possible dish you can. All right. Let's talk about what else is in the newsletter this week in case you missed it. Of course, always flogging the generative AI course, right? If you have not taken the course, please go and at least inspect it, right? Go to trustinsights.ai/AI course. It is a worthwhile investment of your time to learn a lot of this stuff. We did a great live stream this week. John and I, Katie and I all did a live stream on Matomo Analytics, which is the free open source alternative to Google Analytics. A lot of people not real thrilled with Google Analytics 4, you know. However, uh, Matomo is kind of like Universal Analytics, like Universal Analytics from circa 2015. It's a really good piece of software and it's easy to use. So we went through how to set it up, how to get up and running with it. So go check out that live stream. Also had a piece this week on hacking social media algorithms. You can't. As well as a bunch of stuff on AI. So go check that stuff out. Let's see what we got for jobs this week. We have account director at Stanton and Company, associate story producer of TikTok and Instagram at Golden Hippo. It's a great company name. Digital customer relationship manager at Dansco, digital marketing manager at ClearSpace Theater Company, director of digital marketing at AZDS Interactive, e-commerce analytics specialist at Ray Allen Manufacturing, Instagram expert at FUD, marketing director at Barnum Mechanical, programming manager of Instagram at WeVote, TikTok content creator at Ifert Media, and TikTok shop analyst at TikTok itself. That's pretty cool. Other things happening this week. We have Jenny Fowler on organic social media over on Marketing Over Coffee. John did an interview to dig into organic social and as well as a piece on social media search engines, how Kellogg's and Wendy's CEOs stuck their foot in their respective mouths this week, that was something. 5G's impact on mobile SEO strategies. We have a piece from The Atlantic saying that generative AI might finally break copyright. So we'll see how all those court cases turn out. We've got some great pieces from IBM on renewable energy in action use cases for fueling the future. And a fun piece, well, I should say more of an informative piece from my friend Gina Dietrich, who wrote a piece called How Men Can Become Allies for Women to Increase Equality. I was one of the behind the scenes contributors for this post. I contributed all of the dumb things that I've done that I probably should not have, and lessons learned from that. So go read that piece. It's worth your time. Upcoming events, Marketing Prompts AI series in a couple of weeks. I'm doing a talk on prompt engineering for marketers. The Society for Marketing Professional Services in Boston, the New England Regional Conference in April. The Lab Products Association, I'm doing their event in Nashville in April. The Society for Marketing Professional Services in Los Angeles. That's a full day and a half workshop, that one. It's in LA. And I want to emphasize this workshop, it's a day and a half. And while SMPS serves primarily the architecture, engineering, consulting, and construction industry, the workshop applies to anyone. It's generative AI, right? It applies to pretty much anyone. So if you have interest in attending it, it's a day and a half in LA. Go to smps.org. Take the workshop with me because you'll get a chance to really dig into this stuff. Marketing AI conference in Cleveland in September, and then the Marketing Prompts B2B Forum in October here in Boston. One of my favorite events. So worth the time. It's like homecoming and marketing in all in one. So that is going to do it for this week's newsletter. I hope that you found it entertaining and educational. I hope you try out building your own recipes with generative AI, building the kinds of prompts that really will give you a serious strategic advantage. Thanks for tuning in. I'll talk to you next time.